Alright, today we're going to put a bridge assembly together. Here's all the components. You've got your bridge rail, you've got your 2 end plates, you've got 8 wheel assemblies with M5 by 30 millimeter long button head screws. You've got the 4 spacers, you've got the 4 eccentrics. I've marked them on the short side of the eccentric, and that's what I'll put out for the future wheel adjustment. You've got a washer for each wheel, and you've got a lock nut for each wheel. Got 1 X belt assembly, 2 Y belt assemblies, and their attachment hardware, which will be 3 lock nuts, 3 washers for the stationary side, and then we've got 3 washers, 3 nuts, and 3 lock washers for the movable side. Then I've got the X belt cable carrier supports and their attaching hardware. I've got the X motor with the limit switch attached, and I've got the 2 M5 by 45 with a washer, button head screws to attach that, and I've also got the idler pulley with the 3 washers that go underneath, and the M5 by 45 button head screw with a lock nut. Alright, so the first thing you want to do is attach one of the end plates. I've got the bridge rail facing me the way it would be in the bot, with the idler pulley to the right and the motor to the left, and so the belts are going to end up being adjustment in the front, so that's the way I'm going to mount it. So I'll take my M5 by 12 flathead screws, and they go in these countersunk holes right here. So at first I'm just going to loosely assemble this on there. Now I'm going to install the T-nuts for the cable tray supports. Gets 3 across the back, or 5 across the back, 3 on the bottom. Normally I would just slide the trolley assembly on here, but since a lot of people do the GB3 upgrade, I'll show you how to get the trolley assembly on the bridge with it already assembled. So you go for the other end plate. Edit that part out.
Yeah.
Alright, once you get the end trucks on, the idea is to get both the end trucks square with each other, which is not as easy as it seems. So while pushing down the bridge rail, just barely snug up on one end plate. Then come around and do the other side. And then you want to see if you've got any rocking. And I got lucky, this one's pretty good. Go ahead and snug it up. If after you put it together it's rocking, you can just, before you do the final tightening, you can just twist it in your hand and get the end plates situated, and then just a couple of thousandths is fine. Even 5 is probably okay, but if you get much more than that, you'll have alignment issues with the wheels on the master rails. So that's pretty good right there. So what I'm going to do next is I'm going to mount the Y belts. The Y belts are the 64-inch long ones, and so let me do this side so you can get a better picture of it. So you want it oriented in this position. And I've already put it together with 2 teeth sticking out each side. Stationary side's going to get a washer and a lock nut. Movable side's going to get the washer, then the lock washer, and then a regular M5 nut. And this is really important because if you don't do this correctly, it's almost impossible to adjust these belts once you get it on the bot. So I'll go ahead and use a 8mm wrench and the Allen wrench, and I'll go ahead and tighten these up. Very important to get these as tight as you're going to get them off the bot. One thing, it seats the belt in the block, and it also seats the flathead screw in the block, and that way when you go to adjust this, you can loosen the regular nut without the flathead screw loosening up. See, I can now loosen that and tighten it back up. I forgot my rubber bands. Make sure you don't have the belt twisted like I do. Come on, baby. Alright, now I'm going to go ahead and install the wheels. Let me go get some rubber bands. I'll be right back. So I'm going to hold the Y belts in position with rubber bands, and that helps it, makes it easier to mount them to the bot. So that's the bridge with the belts installed on the Y-axis. Now we'll go ahead and put the wheels on. So I've marked the eccentric on the smallest side, and that will be facing down when you get this all assembled, and that way you've got the biggest gap in between the wheels, and it'll make it go in the bridge very easily. What you want to do is you want to go ahead and put some grease where it's going to contact the end plates. That ought to be sufficient right there. Cool. And that actually helps it stick to the end plate too. Makes it easier to assemble this. So I'll just pop it on there. See, the grease will actually hold it on there. So got a wheel with a M5x30 button head screw. And I will use a M5 washer. and an M5 lock nut. The upper wheel is similar, but it's got the barrel shaped spacer and it doesn't need any grease. It goes in the top. And you just repeat for the other side as well. I normally use a power driver when I assemble these. You really have to be careful if you do that though, because the lock nuts have a tendency to gall on these button head screws. So if you do use a power driver, make sure you put a little grease inside the lock nut, and that'll keep it from galling, because it's stainless on stainless. And you don't want to go crazy tighten these up because it will distort the wheel. So you want to just get it a little snug. Then you want to make sure that your black marks that you put previously are facing the bottom. And that'll give you the biggest space in between the wheels and make it easier to put it on the bot. So I guess without a torque wrench, you would say the proper tightness on these is going to be, after you run this all the way down, it's going to be about 1/8 of a turn. So now I'm going to install the idler pulley, and that uses a M5 by 45, a lock nut, and then 3 washers. The 3 washers go underneath the wheel, and you want to make sure you have the concave, smooth side of the washer against the bearing. If you do it the other way, that side of the washer can actually tear the seal on the bearing, so it's pretty important to make sure you get it in the right orientation. The M5 by 45 installs from the bottom, and you'll put your 3 washers on. Can you see that?
Mm-hmm.
So make sure you put the smooth side up. The countersunk part of the wheel goes down. you contact, it's going to be the same thing, about 1/8 of a turn. So there's the wheel. So this is the way the trolley assembly is going to come for a dual extruder. It's got both the left and right hot ends, all the wiring, the fan shrouds, the extruders themselves, trolley mounting bracket. So you got to have this apart to be able to get it on the bridge. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. Take the top cover off here with the fan. I found that the fan shrouds come off easier without cracking if you'll take these screws out almost all the way. And you have to remove the extruders to get the X belt on. I'm going to go ahead and disconnect the fan wiring and just get it out of here. That's the outboard fans. They go in this position right here. So to remove the hot ends, you have to back these set screws out right here. And then you want to unbolt the extruders. Take the hot end and the thermocouples out. Alright, all that work just to be able to get the slots that the X belt mounts to. Also, it's not going to fit on the bridge without taking the front two wheels loose, or alternatively, you can slide this on with one end truck off. I prefer to do it by loosening the wheels. And you can also attach to the pulley, the trolley, before you install the motor and the idler pulleys, but I'll put so many of these together, it's just faster for me to do it this way. So I'll loosen these front wheels almost completely till it just starts to go down into the lock nut. I've attached the X belt just the way I did the Y belts, and I'm going to install this on the bridge. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to thread it over the idler pulley. I'm going to thread this into the motor. And now what you want to do is you want to start the trolley with the back wheels. Now I'm going to go ahead and install the motor. You install the motor with a M5 by 45 with one washer under the head, and that keeps the screw from bottoming out in the motor. And this is plastic, so you don't want to over tighten this. Alright, so now is the time to get your belt adjustment. The adjuster is going to be on this side, so you want to loosen your previously tightened nut up. I use a 4mm with a handle. You probably don't have that luxury, but
now, about how tight do they want it?
Just to where it's just slightly difficult to pinch it all the way together. That's probably a little too tight. Back it off. Normally, if you do the two teeth sticking out of the adjusters, you'll almost be dead in the middle of this slot right here when you're properly adjusting. So go ahead and tighten this up, because once you get the extruder motors on there, you're not going to be able to get to this again. Alright, so now you've got the assembly, you can put your extruders back together. So I normally like to run the wires first. They're marked extruder 1 and extruder 2, or hot end 1 and hot end 2. Make sure you keep your wires up in between the extruders, because they will, there's a close fit between the motors and they will pinch the wires. Put your hot ends in. Now the correct way to put these hot ends in is to push them all the way up. Get your set screw started. All the way down with it, and then back off, and you want to pull the extruder down. And this helps you because that way, as the filament comes in, it doesn't push the extruder out and you lose your table zero. You'll end up crashing the table, so it's best to have it pulled all the way out and then tighten up the set screw.
Left and right. Cool.
And these are marked, like I said. You want to make sure you push the wires back. You can bend them right here, and that keeps them from contacting the bridge as the bot operates. Normal wiring orientation is going to be thermocouple 1 here, thermocouple 2 there. Hot end. You can tell the orientation of the fans, whether they're left or right, by the way the outside fan sits. So that would be a right-hand fan. That would be a left-hand fan. And then the way you fit these fans is they've actually got to fit in between the end vanes. So you want to make sure that the edge of the fan fits in that space right there on each end. You don't want the fan sitting up too high or too low. You want it right in the middle. Fans, you want to run the wires down the side of the trolley to where they clear that cutout in the cover. I normally put the outrigger fan in the trolley bracket first, and that's how I keep up with it. So there's the outrigger fan, and I'll put that in that slot. So normally that's going to be where the wiring goes for extruder 1. It'll come in this side. Extruder 2, I'm sorry. It comes in this side, goes through that slot out here, and it'll go to the extruder 2 motor. And then the extruder 1 will come over the top, down through that hole, down that slot out there, and go into extruder motor 1. Put the fan cover back on. Then last but not least, I'm going to put the X-axis cable tray supports on. So you'll use 3 of the 5 T-nuts you put in. There's no point in tightening it down. 2 of these T-nuts on the back are going to go to the XY cable support, so go ahead and move them down, and you can install the cable carriers in these 3. So in the front, you're just going to use an M5x8. And you got the 3 T-nuts you previously put in the bottom. And these are going to take an M5x10 button and screw. And I'm just going to loosely assemble these because it's easier to do it here than it is on the bot. So I'm sorry, it's an M5x12, holds the bottom on. The orientation on these is usually, I put one right in the center line, and then the other will be like 10 cable tray lengths apart. I don't worry about orienting them until I'm actually doing the wiring. that's it. It's ready to go on the bot. Alright, so we're going to put the bridge assembly on. Notice I've got the belt oriented this way. I'm going to make sure it doesn't slip out. Got the same on both sides. That's what the rubber bands are for. So you just start the first set of wheels on there. Voila.